sunflowers were planted to kind of have a distraction for the birds and something to bring pollinators. So it kind of has dual purposes. And so
really big, too big.
yeah, well, we have like mammoth sunflowers out there, but you're welcome to plant different varieties that suit what your needs are. But just know that sunflowers are an option within the four sisters. But you don't want to plant them. What I've discovered is you don't want to plant them in the zooning off of it. If you're going to put sunflowers, you're going to put them, kind of make them a fencing on the outside. Because what I've done is, we have sunflowers that are just so plentiful whenever irrigation happens into this traditional garden. So they're all over. They're kind of like a weed at this point. And they'll impede on the growth of your melons. But they can be used in other ways as well. We have a row out there dedicated to peppers and chilies. And I don't know why bunnies love chilies, and so they've just been eating away at my jalapenos and my anchos. And I have some Anaheim coming out, and I'm worried that they're going to eat those. And I've used the sunflowers because they're spiky too, like the squash. I've used them to protect my chilies. There's one sunflower out there right now protecting 2 jalapeno plants. I can show you guys that as well. And then the amaranth can be substituted for sunflowers as well. And if you haven't seen amaranth before, we have a very beautiful purple red dye amaranth out there that you can check out. And okay, then you'll get to see it.
That's why we planted the whole over here. We did sunflower. We did the last 2 rows.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
those will be your plants out there that you'll get to see.
Yay! That's amazing.
I know, and they're going quite dramatic. Some of them are bigger than me right now, and they grow fast.
And I didn't really know what they were either, but they were explaining how they use them for dyeing as well, for the colors, because they're like peppermint. That's exciting.
You'll
cool.
probably love growing amaranth because it does really well in all of these conditions. And I haven't tended to them or anything like that. They've just been growing, and so I think they'll do really well in any condition you put them in down here. And then the one that we have, there was someone that we wanted to come here and dye their wool, but that ended up not going through. But that's a possibility. Is that you can use it to dye wool, yeah, or you could use it to dye clothes. I don't know. I've never dyed a shirt before. That's something that could possibly be done. Amaranth is AMANTH, I believe. But again, on the handout I gave you guys, at the very bottom there is a discussion about the other sisters, and amaranth is in that. I believe it's somewhere between us.
And then, are those used sometimes for like
You could eat them.
shade? Like to shade your other plants as well?
Amaranth?
Yeah, like, or sunflowers?
Sunflowers, I think that's sort of a byproduct. It could be done, but you'll see how it works out there.
Okay.
And I'll kind of explain to you like maybe what the pros and benefits of the sunflowers are. Because in some spaces it's really helped them, and in some spaces it's impeded growth.
Okay,
so you
like
have
you
to
said.
be, yeah, so you have to be aware of like the spacing and your growing conditions. And then so the other variation I want to talk about was the Optum Optum flood irrigation canal field. It's a little long, but basically it's an Optum field with rows, and we flood it twice a month. So I didn't know how to properly say that. Sorry, my bad. And then with that, we have the Tanaha Optum 60-day white corn, and this is a really cool corn. This is like, I'm going to play around with this more and more as I grow it, but basically what it is it's a small, like, almost like just that small. And unlike the blue corn that I talked about before, this is going to get tall. You know, it's going to try and get as tall as it can. It's going to try and get to that size, the sunflower size. You know, that's what it's hoping for, is to try and get taller than me. But with the Tanaha Optum white corn, it's short. It's not going to, I mean, I'm a short guy, so you get as tall as me. But most likely it'll get to like shoulder height. You know, that's where it'll be like, okay, this is as tall as it will get. Because what it's trying to do is that it's used to be growing down here. It's not I mean, now we have irrigation with the water whenever they
Oh,
want
yeah.
to control the water.
Oh, yeah,
Back
that's
then, they just had to rely on the snow caps melting over in like snowflake area, those
Exactly.
like mountains, and also like just the flow of the river and however they could do their irrigation. And so this plant is adapted as fast as possible and try and reach maturity as fast as possible. And that's also why it'll produce like small plants. It's just trying to get food going. And what's exciting is I planted it and within 1 week it already started sprouting. As opposed to my blue corn, some of them took 3 weeks, some of them took a month, some of them took 2 weeks. It varied, even though they kind of have similar water. So that's kind of like what you take into account with Three Sisters is that you have to understand a little bit about how they're going to grow, because you don't want them to grow out of because what can easily happen is that you plant your squash first, then you plant your corn, then you plant your beans. Then I don't know where your squash is the one that's growing the most. And the squash plant, it binds out, it can protect your plants, but it can also kill them. And so what it does is it'll reach out with its little kind of vines, start grabbing things. And if it gets too close to the beans and the corn, too small, he'll just eat it, wipe them over, just like any other plant. And so beware of growing habits and spacing. So with the blue corn, I wouldn't put the squash too close, but you'll see how it is. So that's just one thing I want to highlight. It's just kind of how
interaction.
and what we've coupled with it is
It's right next to. It's right. Oh, it's right.
and so this brown Teptubrian is very different to the other bean that I showed you today. So this bean is binding. It'll climb up and spread out and do trellises, or you use the corn stalk. And in some cases, you can even use the sunflower. There's some beans growing out there that sometimes grab the sunflower, so they can use the substitute. But this doesn't do that. This creates a little bit of this top in the base of this. And what I like to do is when I couple these two together, I think of it as a little sister taking care of the big sister. So what you do is you'll plant, let's just say this is the plants right here. And you'll plant these little bean bushes and they'll grow and they'll be like little yay high and they'll be about here. And these beans will start pumping nitrogen into the ground. Not a lot about nitrogen, just a little bit. Most of the nitrogen you get from beans is when after they break down into the soil. But while they're growing, they'll still feed you. Which is still good, especially if you're not too sure about your soil type. This is something that we should highlight really quick, is that with beans, they're a nitrogen fixer. So in addition to composting, mulching, adding fertilizer to your soil, you can do beans. Even if you don't like beans, you can do beans. Like, see, these are little teeny beans. We have some actually here. You guys can check out. This is let's see what these texture beans look like. Really small. And this is sort of the same size that the blue corn, the gold beans are. But this is a Hopi pink bean. Like the full Cornish gold beans would be about that size. You kind of see the difference in these two varieties. I've seen enough beans.
What was his name? You said it.
But both those are beans. Both those are super nutritious foods. Whether you want to put them in your soups or breakfast. There's probably like, you know how like potatoes, there's like thousands of varieties. I am 100% sure there's thousands of varieties.
I'm telling you, I got tons of beans, and it's like it's non-stop beans.
And I'm only really proficient or knowledgeable about the beans in the Southwest area and the ones in Artificial, of course, but that's just the ones that I'm aware of. That doesn't take into account all the different regions and all the different diversity that comes from those regions. Choosing beans that have been grown in similar environments to where you live is always ideal. With the brown Teptree bean, they're the most drought-tolerant bean in the world, and they grow, near Casa Grande, near Copa area. These are cultivated by the Salt River. The Gila River Reservation. This is from the Ramona Farms. This is where this picture is. And So they'll create little bean plants, little bean bushes, and I like to think of it as the little sisters taking care of the big sister.
And then you said with plant placement, if you were going to plant them together, the bushes are on the outside and the plants are on the inside.
So if you look at your guys' diagram, you'll want to plant the corn in the center, and then you'll want enough spacing to where like the corn's gonna get grow. It's gonna grow. You don't want too close. So I kind of spaced it out by like just one's distance, just the corn and distance based. So give them enough space to grow. Or depending on what you choose, whether you choose a bush bean or most likely you'll end up with a bush bean. But depending on but they can do it.
Okay.
And then the next part is I have the Hal squash, or peanut squash as what they call it. Or we could call it optimum squash. And this is just like a really, it's similar to like most squashes you're familiar with, but it's very drought tolerant. It has like minimal irrigation. It's grown really well, and what I've done is that in the fields you would want to plant your squashes sort of on the outside rows. With the field here, I've done a different variation that I want to show you guys, and you'll see. I'll kind of explain to you like the troubleshoots that I've had. But after my experience, I would always recommend just sort of having squash be like their own row outside. If you're doing a field, so kind of doing a field sort of area. And then if you're doing the Zuni waffle beds, just doing it. And then the next part is we've decided to put the yellow watermelon out there.
Well, because
It took over a year.
What I've shown out there is instead of like having it next with the squash, I've just replaced the squash entirely with yellow watermelon in those rows, just to show that they are very similar and they have a similar function within the three sisters. These ones will probably be like just like head size, and the yellow watermelon, if you guys aren't familiar with, is I think it's been coveted by the Hopis, and it's been coveted by the Optum people a lot. They have another word. They both have words for this in their language, just because of how much it's meant to. I know. And then the cool thing too is that with yellow watermelon, and regular watermelon is very delicious and healthy, especially a refreshing snack. If you guys are planning to start growing now, I would suggest, depending on how often 60-day corn, you can do again during other types of short growing corn. There's another thing you can grow, because it's already starting to pass on everything. And so you can do another round of it again if you guys want to try this. And then if you guys want, I would also then don't use summer squash, use winter squash, use pumpkin. June 15th is a window of opportunity to plant if you're interested. You can use pumpkin, or if you aren't craving squash, you guys can then use melons. If you want to just use melons and substitute. And then you can use the beans either right next to it for the corn, or as you saw for the squash, since you can do it on the outside, or just within the city. The last bit is that if you want, you can substitute the corn with sunflowers if you want to start right now. Just plant sunflower. Sunflower cantaloupes can be planted year-round down here. And then, depending on your guys' bean, I would suggest that use the Petri bound bean. It's very similar to the corn, and it's used to cultivate twice a year. But they're low yielding, just to let you guys know, and but they're really neat. And they're the most drought tolerant beans in the world, at least according to it. But and then that reminds me. So as a rather side note, is that I want to be able to make sure that everybody that walks away here today has an idea of what you can plant around this time. Say if you haven't already started your garden. I always want to give a shout out to the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension, which has a beautiful calendar, and you guys can take a picture of this as well. it kind of takes the mystery out of what can plant, what can survive, you know? It's very simple, nice little calendar. And the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension is very proficient growers. They're the kind of people who will grow, you know, give them a plant, they'll figure out how to grow it, even if it's not supposed to grow here. But they also enjoy being able to foster it and educate about rural foods, in addition to like what native health is pursuing. The other additional resource I want to give people is from Native Seeds. So Native Seeds is a big source of a lot of our seeds here in Nutritional Garden. A lot of big source from my own gardening because they use a lot of heirloom seeds, and they have a seed bank down in Tucson, and they have this beautiful calendar as well. Nice little table, exactly when to plant, harvest. Down here, if you want to do year-round planting, which is something you have access to down here. And Native Seeds is very much interested in being able to continue and foster the indigenous gardening practices and varieties that have existed since time immemorial and continue on in the future. Continue these varieties, continue that sense of self-reliance, and then he'll also give you a little bit of a tip in terms of like how you can plant. You can do the three sisters that you guys saw in rows, in waffle beds, so they're similar to a sunken bed. You can do them in raised beds.
Okay.
There is a possibility you could do it in a pot, but you'll have to use a little bit of what you know now about the plants, what seeds you know. Just know that the seeds that you're used to eating in the stores, such as zucchini, yellow squash, honeydew, watermelon, just like the ones you're used to eating in the stores, those will require more water than if you chose a grape variety, and they'll also require a bit more nutrient. And I can show you guys a little bit about how you create your nutrient-rich soil. Really quick, I want to give you guys a composting 101. Sweet, okay.
There you go.
You can find them. You can find this all online, and all these calendars are available online as well.
And then and
yeah, and the Native Seeds is the one I want to. I love their information. I love their varieties. And if you guys are like, I want to try growing these varieties, great place to spot. That's where we source a lot of ours. I also source ours from, I was part of the Dokosleed Agricultural Co-op in northern Arizona. I forgot to mention this. I used to, after the pandemic, I worked for the pandemic for 2 years until I felt like things had gotten under control in terms of like it wasn't insane. And I decided to start fostering food sovereignty. So I worked with a nonprofit called Twinajamene, which means Sacred Water Speaks in Navajo. And we worked towards building food sovereignty. So in which case we taught a lot about the Three Sisters. We taught about mulching, drip irrigation, how to best garden for the future, which is very hot, very dry, and a very one where the weather is super warm. And so that's a little bit about my background. But I source a lot of our seeds from those farmers up north. So I always encourage you guys to stop by your local farmers markets, contact your local farmers. They all love giving out seeds. They all love being able to continue and foster this within the community. Right now, we're starting to build up our inventory of seeds. I didn't bring enough to like give out, but if you guys are curious, we can do a situation where we can do a seed exchange later on in the future. If you guys would like to try and grow some of the varieties we have out here, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, but I just recommend just giving it a shot. No matter what you guys do, at least you'll walk away with one vegetable. And some knowledge. But this field receives irrigation twice a month, a whole river worth. And so that's why I was able to sort of adopt the mound layout to the rows. But normally I wouldn't suggest you to put squash and corn and this kind of layout for the rows unless you got a pot, which I do, but that will just depend. But you'll see, when I planted the corn was the first thing you planted first, so you wanted to wait till it sprouted, and then you plant beans surrounding it. And what I did is you could put a whole bucket's worth if you want, but you would plant it 1, 2, 3, 4, just on all sides. And what this will look like is this is probably as tall as this corn's really going to get before it starts to produce. And then it'll create like these little bean bushes. And these beans, down at their root system, there's fungi developing little, like kind of like tubulars, little potatoes. They're really teeny. And that's where the nitrogen to soil begins. and there they'll pump, because corn loves nitrogen. Back up north, we'll take a whole corral's worth of manure and really dig that into the soil for these guys to grow. But with the beans, they kind of help do that without having to get the cow. And the great thing too is when you guys have your squash, you want to make sure, this is where I was talking about, was you don't want them to be too close for them to feed on each other's growth. So what's happening here is that the squash is starting to decide to go this direction, and it's going to take down these beans. And so I'm just going to trim back some of this vines and kind of let it redirect down into the canal. And that way the sisters won't harm each other anymore. And then these beans will go back to doing what they're doing, no problem at all. And then this squash will then go to help protect them from the rabbits, because they start to come in from like the different places where the water floods in, and they'll nip away. I'm actually happy to see these beans. They were the base, but the beans continue to grow. They're quite used to being eaten, but you always want to make sure that the sisters we're not too close where they'll start to attack, but just enough to where this will deter bunnies passing by. And we don't have the opportunity to see how it looked when I planted it, but when you plant corn, you'll want to put at least 3, maybe 4 together so that they can create some stalks. See? Like 1, 2, 3. So they really become sturdy against the wind. And then you'll want to, with the beans, I put about 4 about in each space, and that way they can create enough of a bush, and it also adds a bit of that insurance because of, rabbits. But with the squash, I planted 3, but you'll notice there's only 1 here. And so with the squash, you're gonna have to do something called thinning out, because as you see, the squash will, potentially harm the other sisters. You don't want, they'll do that same thing if you put 3 in the same spot. But you plant 3 for that insurance, and then the strongest of the 3 you keep. And then the good news is that'll help with any bugs. If you guys I'm having a squash bug problem right now. Actually, let's see if we're contaminated. If we have squash bugs, I'll show you. I've done a really good job of keeping them down, but there's some beds that'll have them if you guys are curious to do it. But making sure to plant 3 squash so that if they get attacked by these bugs, because squash bugs are pretty ferocious eaters, they'll kill them, the plants.
What are some of your attempts for trying to control the squash?
Well, the easiest way I like to do it is I'll have I wish I could do an example, but I've already gone around and killed a whole bunch though. But you'll get a watering pail, and you'll just kind of water the base of the squash bug, because that's where they like to kind of, when it gets really hot in the day, they'll kind of stick to the roots to keep themselves cool. And so when you water it down, they'll think, oh, it's flooding, so they're going to start to climb up. And depending on your guys' level, I'll just grab it, chop the heads off with my scissors. But if otherwise, what you can do is you can get a bucket of water and soap, just put them in there, and what the soap does is it'll cover their exoskeleton and suffocate. And it's really sweet. With the water bottle I do, as you can see, I don't like these bugs. But if you get a water bottle or a spray bottle, when you spray them, they'll within seconds, and then you just get it on. And so it's pretty fast, but if you just do the bucket idea, that's pretty sweet. You can pick it, or you can spray it. With the spray bottle, I can show you guys how to use it, because it does come with a bit of know-how, because you don't want to do it midday and scorch your plants, and you don't want to put too much to where it's just you're introducing too many chemicals. And so this is a bit of the layout that I want to show you. And the cool thing is that you can kind of start this layout, once it's started, once the corn's got to this height and the beans got to their height, you can add squash at any point and it'll be fine. The main thing is just when they're starting out. And so we got squashes of different sizes. So here's one. Here's one at that mid-size. And then we have one just now sprouting. And they're going to be totally fine at any level. When you introduce, the squash is one that you can introduce at any kind of point. It just depends on your run calendar and your guys' water. The squash you kind of wanted to have planted all in March and in April, but because I know this is going to get flooded and become a little pond or lake, I'll put that in at any point. And if you put your squash in at around June 15th, they'll be ready by Halloween. So squash and pumpkin are very closely related. You can substitute squash for pumpkin and say that if you say you want to do you want to grow some squash or you want to grow some pumpkin, plant around June 15th, you'll be ready for Halloween. And I was going to show you guys. So these 2 rows are squash, beans, corn. But come follow me. Oh wait. This is what they look like. So this is what squash bugs look like. As you can see, my eyes are super keen to them. So right here is kind of what they look like. They have a bit of like a flat body, kind of brown.
And that's like an older one, right?
Yeah, so what I do is I cut it off.
Woo! Cut his head off.
And then, I don't know if you guys can smell that. It's got a bit of a turgid scent. And that's how I kill them. That's the easiest. I mean, you can put them in soap water. You can squish them. But if you got a little trusty scissor, that's the best way. But because just 2 of those will produce. You guys smell it? Smell my fingers if you're.
No.
It'll smell like detergent. But just 2 of those can produce thousands of seeds. And then this year, because of climate change, they decided to overwinter themselves instead of dying off. And this is going to happen with bugs year after year as the years come by. Flies will come back sooner. They'll have 2 waves of them. Any other bugs will start to. Instead of dying off for the winter, they'll decide just to burrow. And so be careful when you guys mulch. There's no mulch on any of this because I don't want them to give them a space to hide. And but if you do mulching, I prefer pine needles. I think that's the best way. But yeah, it's just something to be aware of. They're just going to produce a whole lot of eggs. And when they get to egg size, the best way to deal with them is to just get duct tape and just duct tape them off. And I can show you guys, there's a bed that's got them in there if you want to see what those look like and see how to treat it. And I can just show you guys a whole like extermination event. But but the terrible part, the most terrible part is when they hatch. Is they'll look like all these black, like hundreds of little black spiders. Or if you guys have seen Spirited Away, like those little sick creatures. And you know what I'm talking about? No, like from the Ghibli films?
Yeah.
Okay, they know. Little black spider eggs.
And so when they go, they're just like flooding the ground, right? Like say when they're hatching, like you said, are they just like moving on the ground?
No, they'll be underneath the leaves.
Oh, okay.
And so this plant's pretty good, but this one is pretty close to the ground. It's kind of yellowing, and so what might be underneath could be a squash plant. So the leaves that look the weakest, you want to investigate first. That's usually where they'll find. Either you'll look under and you're like, okay, nothing. Or you'll see little eggs, kind of like fish eggs. Or you'll look up and it's a spider, like just tons of black little things running around. They'll kind of run. They're like scared of you, and so they'll know that you're after them. So they'll scurry to the winds. So that's where you get the water bottle. That's the hardest part is when they already hatch, is dealing with them. You could use duct tape. But then I don't know, I'm pretty, as you saw, I'm pretty nonchalant with bugs, but these ones are really gross to me too. But let's go check out the rest of the field. So with that side, when I want to irrigate on days that aren't irrigation day, I will just simply have a hose down and flood those canals. With this, it's simple as putting a hose down and flooding the square. And with this variation, so this bed isn't the most ideal because these squash plants were planted earlier than everything else. So you kind of see everything's still very young. But I had to use the space. And so here we have yellow squash, we have Navajo pumpkin growing, and then we have blue corn, and then we have some gold yellow beans. Zuni gold beans. But you can see that this can easily impede on their growth. So if need be, I'll just come by and remove that branch, which will be fine. You just kind of have to let the plants know, don't grow that way. And then they pick it up from there. And not to say that they're like sentient, but just like the plants have different behaviors, and then knowing how to encourage different behaviors with each other is one of the benefits of companion planting. What it does is just means that all of these sort of now benefit from it. This is just one variation, and you can look into and then here I have casabas. No wait, this is melon. Oh, honeydew. This is honeydew right here. And then here I have some Hopi squash. And you can see like it could easily start to impede, but it looks like they're starting to grow this way instead. So they know that these guys are here. And then with these beans, they're going to start to get very viney and start to like climb. So I'm going to have to water this more to get this corn to grow more. But that's just because this corn was planted a bit late, and then this side gets the least amount of water. So just being aware of how your corn's going to grow, so that the beans don't overgrow them. But this corn's going to pick up relatively soon. So any questions about how to do waffle beds? So this one's I'm still kind of working on. It's very new to me. But you can. The good thing about these is they kind of help retain water even in the driest part of the garden. And then they also help with kind of having your ideal set of spacings. And the cool thing is you can use any variety of squash here. There was that yellow squash over there. This is like a Hopi squash that kind of look like a pumpkin. This is honeydew, but this is cassava. So you're allowed to experiment with the different varieties. And they'll all encourage each other's growth. And like I said, you can also have onions in there. I need to pick those onions. But you can also have onions too to kind of protect against the different rodents. So for the field method, it's great. It's great to have those plants next to each other the way I've been seeing it. But the problem was that I then started to have a rabbit issue. And so the way I would change that layout is on the outside rows, I would just have squash. And then on the inside rows is where I can then do my corns and my beans and then my watermelons. And then with this variation, what I would do was I would probably make these beds a little bit bigger to give them more spacing, because this one feels very congested. Like you see, squash plants, melons, squash plants, melons, and then actually I think but right now they're still really good. But once these get to a certain size, I'll decide which one I want to keep. And so from looking at this, I probably want to keep this one down here, just because I water the edge of this more, so this will get more water over time. And then this is starting to be attacked by some. And the bugs will always kind of give you an indicator which plants are the weakest, because they tend to target the weaker ones. So if you're like, okay, this, in terms of which one you want to choose when you're thinning it out, that'll give you guys an idea. Like, oh, okay, this one's being attacked. There's something maybe going on with this, maybe it's not strong. I'll take it, this one can then dry. But right now they're too small that I'm like, I don't want them to lose one or the other, so I'm just gonna let them keep growing for a while until we get to more of that size. And then you'll see again, we got the beans variety. Any questions as to this layout? I like this side, it's doing really well. Those two ones in the middle are sort of like still kind of slow in their growth, but every corner is sort of produced really well. And then it's done, the way I water this is with a bucket, and I'll kind of just go, and it does really well to kind of keep all that water in place, kind of seep into the soil. It also keeps the roots cool. This side's probably one of the drier sides of the field. This whole side is, so you see that the growth is slower, but the Optum field, all of those seeds were like even more drought tolerant than these. And that has the most water when the irrigation happens. So what ended up happening was that was just a beautiful combination of super fast growing seeds, a lot of water, perfect conditions. Look at that growth. And over here, these are slower growing. You know, they're getting less water. They're used to up north, so the heat's a little different, but they're still used to like Hopi area, which is still hot. So that's why their growth's a little slower, but they're just slower growing as well. They're supposed to take the whole year up to October to harvest. But back on that field, that one should be ready for the monsoon. And then I'll plant again. So I could do 2 sets of corn, and then this one, the corn will take all year, and then eventually get to the sunflower size. Sweet. Any other questions? I water every other day during the summer, and then before then I kind of spaced it out. But I've noticed that I had to water every other day because I've been losing some of my seedlings, like some of my little baby melons and some of my little baby squashes. Even though they're drought tolerant, I do have to keep up the water. So I do it every other day, or at least a bucket's worth for these waffle beds. And then for that side, again, I would probably use some powder buckets where the watering is different for both, really. So it'll depend on your needs. And then now, to finish everything up, because most likely you guys will have raised beds, I'll show you guys what it can look like. A variation of the Three Sisters, but without the corn. What they've done is they've used beans in conjunction with squash. Because, like I said, the beans feed nitrogen to the soil, but corn is not the only heavy eater. Squash is as well. And so what she's done, she's planted beans in the outside perimeter to feed the growth. And this plant produces like once a week zucchinis. But you could do that same thing with different varieties of squash, different varieties of pumpkin. You can put melon there and still surround with beans. And this is really important if you don't have a lot of soil amendment, is being able to start having these beans. Even if you don't eat them, having them there to continually feed the growth of what you do want. Because I don't think Lillian's going to be eating a lot of beans. That's not why she planted these. She didn't need to. And then over here is a small variation of the field layout. So here we have Navajo popcorn. Navajo popcorn is very similar to the Kanahaku white corn, which is this short, fast-growing, small corn. And see, she's already got tasseling, she's already got the the corn pollen going. And then, as you'll see, she then has a teeny little spot right here dedicated to beans. And then some of these corns also have the beans growing up. I don't know if you can see them. See the bean? They're starting to slowly climb her corn. But this is a short corn. It can still be done if you want a vining one, and they won't overgrow each other, because most of the time beans aren't like prolific. But if you want, you can replace the beans with other types of legumes. Am I saying that right? Legumes?
Oh, legume. Yeah.
Legumes,
Yeah.
okay. Like if you wanted, you could put a snow pea here, you could put like a snap pea, things like that. You just gotta pair it with like a tall corn. But with this bean, it's okay that she showed a short corn. And then, yeah, you can even have them in their own little plot here. And they create like little bushes, and they'll feed this growth here. And then they can, if she wanted to, next year, corn's on this side. Next year, if she wants, she can put corn on this side. And you can see she's got 2 beautiful sunflowers into her 4th sister. And then she's got her squash plants growing here. So they don't impede on this other growth. Pretty neat.